Welcome to the Spirit of Mayflower podcast. Monday the 5th of August. The port agents gave lots of advice and kindly called a taxi for the two of us. Yvonne got out downtown and the driver explained it was a bank holiday and the downtown ferry would be very busy. He offered to drive me straight to the apartment as he thought it would take a long time to get to the condo via the ferry. The condo is amazing, so clean and fancy. Dropped off my bags and headed outside where a kind couple told me of a local bar called New Scotland. I'm sitting at the bar, drinking a cider and listening to the locals. What an evening! I sat sipping the cider and said hello to everyone at the bar. Apparently the owners of the bar have Scottish ancestry. They don't have whiskey, just cider, beer and mead that they brew themselves. Got chatting to Katie, who sat next to me. She works with bands and organises their lights and stage setup. We got on very well. The bar was closing at 10 p.m. for Natal Day, a national holiday, I think for the towns to celebrate their town and community, but I'm still not very clear about it. We were invited to a block party. Having never been to one or knew what one was, I said, why not? Katie agreed to look after me and make sure I got back to my lodgings at the end of the evening. We walked through the streets of beautiful houses, all painted wood with coloured trims. Cars stop and wait for you before you get to the crossing. Everyone is so polite. As we walked, she pointed out the old buildings, book swap points in little huts, and I spotted a lot of rainbow flags. She explained that it was Pride a few weeks ago. At the top of the hill we came upon the block party. Lots of people chatting, drinking and dancing to live music. A girl in the queue explained, you put a donation into the charity box, write your name on a plastic cup and help yourself to a drink. It was so friendly. Everyone was happy, but not drunk. I felt a little tipsy. The beer was very strong, as was the cider at the bar. Bumped into some people from the bar. It was like the nightclub scene from Spaced, an excited hi followed by a big, "You've made it!" like we'd known each other for such a long time. After a lovely time at the block party, Katie walked me back towards the wharf where my lodgings are. On the way, some people stopped us with pizza boxes. They asked, "Do you want some? We've eaten too much and have some to spare." I thanked them for their kindness but declined. At King's Wharf I said goodnight to Katie and headed home, to the worst night's sleep on this trip. I'm not sure if it was the strong beer or my inner ear still rocking from the ship journey, but I lay down and the room was so still it made me feel dizzy. Writing in his diary some years later, William Bradford looks back to that first morning in America with wonder.
But here I cannot stay and make a pause, and stand half amazed at this poor people's present condition. They had now no friends to welcome them, nor inns to entertain or refresh their weather-beaten bodies, no houses or much less towns to repair to seek for succour.
Tuesday the 6th of August. It's 9 a.m. and I'm sitting in a cafe drinking fresh coffee and apple juice and eating a vegan breakfast bar. My head is not spinning as much, but feels like I'm still rocking from side to side, like the motion of the ship. It's like when you move a bucket of water. Once it stops moving, the water inside continues until it settles on its own. Maybe after 8 days at sea your brain works out how to function with the rocking motion, and perhaps it takes a little while to settle. I'm not sure what to do today. I've decided, once my head has stopped spinning, to head to downtown Halifax and make my way to the ferry terminal at Alderney. I dropped $2.50 in the money spout and waited for the ferry. They have 2 or 3 running all day, crisscrossing over the water. At Halifax I wandered the streets, and came across an art gallery. It wasn't very interesting work, and there was no details by the artworks either. I ended up in a mall and realised I was very hungry. In the food court, the Chinese looked really good, so I went for veggie balls, rice, bean sprouts, and a vegetable spring roll with a drink. Not too bad either at $11.50. That's nearly as much as one drink cost last night. And people watching in the noisy food court. I think I will try and find a green, quiet space. 1:30 p.m. I'm sitting with my feet in cool water, surrounded by nature, and it's so peaceful. Just what I needed. When I left the mall, I exited at the bus depot, and I remembered seeing a map on the ship, which had a nature reserve called Point Pleasant. I saw the bus approaching, hailed it, and dropped my $2.50 fare into the slot and enjoyed the ride to the last stop. There was a corner shop across from the bus stop, and I purchased a popsicle and a bottle of water and started walking. Point Pleasant is a large area of woodland with wide avenues to walk down. Some strange bird song, and a little browny red creature, small and fluffy, scuttled off before I could get a good look at it. The woodland path opened out at a battery named after Prince Charles, then further past to the water. The water is icy cold and gently laps the side of the pebbly shore, with a whiff of cannabis on the air. There's some young lads fishing a bit further down the water's edge. I'm going to sit for a while and soak it all in. On my walk back through the park, I came face to face with the fluffy creature. It was a red squirrel. I caught the bus back to downtown and visited the main art gallery. I used their cafe first to refresh myself and get some Wi-Fi to talk to home. The gallery was really good and some very interesting work. Back to Alderney on the ferry and picked up some bread and jam for supper. I'm so tired. No sooner had I resigned myself to a quiet night in than I received a message from Sandy and Karsten, who were with Ivan and Urban, and would I like to join them for dinner? So back on the ferry for me. I had a lovely time with them. All of them were waiting for their camper vans to clear customs, and unfortunately none of them were ready today, so they had one more day in Halifax. Dinner was really fun, teaching Germans how to speak broad Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire slang and dialect. We all said goodbye once more and back to the Alderney ferry. I sat on the top and was treated to a beautiful sunset over downtown Halifax and the ports. Thought I'd come to the New Scotland pub for a swift half before bed. They seem to like their Celtic roots here. What to do tomorrow? Bartender suggests checking out the canteen for a great place to eat. Maybe tomorrow I could just wander and take it easy before heading to the airport very early Thursday morning. Wednesday the 7th of August. Wow, did I sleep last night. I left the bar at 9 p.m. and walked the 5-minute stroll to King's Wharf. By 9:30 I'd had my supper, 2 slices of wholemeal bread and jam, washed down with a cup of peppermint tea. I can't remember doing anything else, so I must have been asleep by 10 o'clock, and awoke at 8:30 after 10.5 hours of sleep. This morning I feel refreshed. It's 10:50 in the morning, and I'm still in bed with a coffee. I've decided this morning will be an organising morning. So far, I have caught up with all my emails, I've called home, messaged my dad, and tallied my money, which consists of 4 types of currency. Yesterday, I found an HSBC bank and exchanged some euros that I'd had for the boat and did not need. I got $85 for the 60 euros, which would be better than changing the euros back to sterling as the pound is low. I've also decided to splash out on a taxi tomorrow. Fidel, the taxi driver who collected me from the docks on Monday, had very kindly given me a card and offered a reduced rate if I needed of $50 instead of $70. I decided it was more important to make sure I caught my flight on time and pay $50 than risk missing it for a $3.50 bus ride. I can now relax knowing that Fidel will be outside at 5:10 in the morning and will take me to the airport. Now I'm sat in the canteen, which is absolutely packed full of locals. I've got a seat at the bar and I've ordered a ginger beer and a Thai green curry. I'm starving. The decor is whitewashed interior with hints of natural wood, little knickknacks, potted plants and nautical prints. It's all very nice and not kitschy at all. The light shades are woven bamboo and the shelves of the bar are mounted on black industrial metalwork. It feels very authentic to Dartmouth and a little more down to earth than the lofty buildings of downtown Halifax. Uncle Mick messaged me to say that the Red Arrows will be making an appearance at some point in the skies over Halifax. After lunch, I might head over to the harbour for a tour of the aquabus and do some sightseeing around Halifax and sail through the bay. My Thai curry has arrived. The meal was the best food I've eaten since leaving the UK. The veg was tender but still had a bite to it, the sauce full of flavour, and even the tofu was firm and flavoursome. No way can I fit in a pudding, so the waitress has made me a fruity mocktail. Had a fun afternoon. I crossed the harbour on the Alderney ferry and headed to the harbour hopper ticket booth. $45 got me a ticket on the 3:45 boat. I had 30 minutes to spend, so I took a little walk onto the boardwalk and explored the little huts and shops by the seafront. Found a veggie hut and had a vegan cookie and coffee with almond milk. My first milk in 2 weeks. I got on the hopper and sat on the front row. A bad idea, as I was about to find out. We set off, and on entering the harbour there was a great splash and a wave, and I was drenched from head to toe. So wet it went all the way through to my undies. The history was fascinating and covered everything from the Halifax explosion, where 2 ships collided and caused a massive explosion in 1917, to the Titanic disaster. Halifax was the nearest port and many of the dead were buried here. And also they talked about the city's Victorian parks. We spent half the trip on land and the other half in the water. After the harbour hopper, I explored some more of the boardwalk and got some little gifts for family at home. A very good last day. Back at the condo, I've packed, eaten some bread and jam, then got a message from Katie to ask if I would like to have some last night drinks. I replied yes and headed off. I'm in the canteen having a long drink of bullet bourbon and ginger. I'm going to wait here until 9 o'clock in case she got my message and then head back for an early night, as I think I'll need to be up about 4 a.m. I'm not sure what to do about the ferry to Provincetown. Some crossings are booked up already, but David at the museum said a member of the board owns the ferry company who'd be happy to escort me. I'll message him later, I think, before booking a ticket. Ray has offered to pick me up from the ferry and will drive me to their home, which will become my home from home on Provincetown for 16 days. Well, the early night didn't happen. Katie arrived at 8:30 and we chatted so much. 1 drink went, 2 drinks, 3 drinks. Then we decided, as the restaurant was closing, to go to the New Scotland bar for a last drink. It was strange walking into the bar. They remembered me and my drink. I opted for something with less alcohol due to the fast approaching morning. 11:30 p.m. I left the bar much later than planned, but I had a lovely time with Katie. Thursday, the 8th of August. I'm sat in the airport having a chamomile tea, feeling a little worse for wear. Having had very little sleep, I just could not relax last night and I tossed and turned, wondering if it was time to wake up worried that I would sleep through my alarm and miss my taxi and flight. I must have nodded off for a bit, but then the alarm went off at 4:30. I was straight up, washed, dressed, and breakfast by 4:55. I've washed up my pots, dried and put them away, and then off to find Fidel waiting for me at the front door. Now we return to 1620 to continue the story of Mary Brewster on the Mayflower through her imagined letters to her daughter, written and performed by Ella Pritchard of Highcliffe Music.
The Mayflower, 27th of September 1620. 21 days at sea. My dearest Patience, I hope I did not worry you with my last letter. I am feeling quite well now, although some of the sailors continue to be a torment. How lucky I am to have been able to escape our quarters for a rare spell on deck. You can surely imagine the noise and smell of over 100 passengers crammed into the small living space below deck. There is not enough room to all lie down at night. The sounds of the creaking timbers of the ship, the moans of the seasick, the muttered prayers of the fearful. There is much to be endured. But endure it we must if we are to see the new world. So, here I am, as day breaks after 3 full weeks below. My dearest friend Elizabeth Hopkins woke me at 5:30 this morning. She is having much trouble sleeping, being so great with child. It was quite dark as we made our way up here on deck to watch the night roll away. The scene is quite marvellous. At last the chance to see the mist on the waves in the early morning, to breathe the freshest of air, to feel the breeze on my pale cheeks. I am watching the line of darkness pass over, and the first shimmering pink of sunlight in the east over the ship's wake. The warmth of the sunlight is like the breath of God Himself speeding our journey. It is a time to be thankful and pray for God's continued grace. Trust in the Lord. Wrestling is feeling much better and is helping to amuse our adopted Moor children under the watchful eye of Dorothy Bradford. She is much improved in spirit, praise be. Love keeps managing to escape from the living decks to torment the sailors and get himself into mischief. I am afraid that by journey's end he will have completely run wild. Some of the crew do not set a good example for a lad of his age, but the Mayflower's captain, Mr. Christopher Jones of Harwich, is a man of considerable maritime experience, and I think that with him we are in the safest of hands. Above all, he is an honourable man who respects our beliefs and can be trusted to deliver us to the new world. As I said, most of the crew are an entirely different story. Such drunken tales, bawdy songs, and profane language as I should not wish my boys to hear, but there really is no escaping it. The sailors are superstitious and fearful of transporting so many women and children. We are 68 adults and 34 youngsters in all, which makes for quite a community. Not at all the usual atmosphere for these sea-going men who have spent many years sailing the oceans to the furthest corners of the globe. Also, there are several women who are with child, including poor Elizabeth, who is very near to her time. I should not wish to bring a newborn into these conditions, but for sure a baby will come when it is good and ready. Well, listen to me, Patience, my first fresh air for many days, and I am turned to misery. Shame on me, I must look upwards. We are sailing into our dreams. The cool breeze of earlier is stirring into a strong wind. The rolling of the ship is disturbing my hand, and my writing will soon be impossible to read. It is some comfort in high seas to know that among our company are men and women of sturdy faith and practical skills, who are happy to be led by your father, with dear William Bradford's support and encouragement. I must make haste and return below. The boatswain says that a mighty storm is on the way. With very much love to all, Mother. P.S. Trust in the Lord.
For the next bit of the podcast, we're going to hear a conversation I had this week with fellow traveller Ivan Perez Lopez. When I had a cuppa with John and Mary, they was telling me that after they left us all in Canada, they sailed down to New York and they got to sail past the Statue of Liberty and New York, and then go down into, I think it was Newark. And whilst I was there, they had, I think, a hurricane touchdown. And I noticed on one of your social medias that you had some bizarre weather as well. So I just thought, tell me about that. What was that like?
Well, yes. Yeah, that was, I think, one of the scariest moments in my life. And I was in Prince Edward Island, and the forecast was for winds up to 80 kilometers an hour, which I thought, well, they may be strong, but they're not too bad. I'm sure I can cope with that very well. But then we had a terrible night, really scary, because the winds were up to 120, 130 kilometers an hour.
Gosh.
And it was just non-stop from 6 o'clock in the afternoon that started. And then from 9 until 3 o'clock in the morning, it was really very strong. And well, I just sat inside my van with this very strong wings and just looking out, but without being able to do anything, really.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of being useless, thinking, should I move? But where do I go? I don't know anything. Everything is pitch black. The wind's howling so strongly. And then the van was just shaking from one side to another as well.
Gosh.
So, yeah.
Did it remind you of when we was on the ship when we had some?
No, it was a lot worse than that, I can assure you. I felt very, very safe in the ship, even though it was shaking. So then I just drove in the car park next to a truck, a lorry, and behind the lorry was the trailer, but they were not attached. So I was just like in the lorry head next to it, and it kept me from the wind a little bit. And then I think it was about 10 o'clock at night, I hear a huge boom sound, and the trailer behind just fell over on its side because of the wind.
Gosh.
And thank God in the morning, then it was a bit calmer and nothing happened.
Have you had any other kind of strange experiences? Because I think I told you when I was in Provincetown, one night I got woken up by all this howling outside my window. And I found out that it was coyotes that was roaming wild. So have you encountered any strange wildlife while you've been out and about?
Yeah, well, coyotes I've heard quite a lot, especially in the Midwest and here in the mountains of California. But then, I mean, I'm just sitting inside my van or sleeping, and then you hear them howling outside. So the first time it was kind of funny because it's like, what's that? I mean, I'm in the middle of nowhere. And then you think, well, it must be coyotes. And then another night, I remember, especially in Newfoundland, when I went there with a van, I parked in the middle of nowhere by a lake, beautiful place. And then during the night, I hear some walking around the van very close. And I was like, what's that? So with all my lights off, I opened the windows, the shades, just to look outside to see if I saw any light. And it was pitch black, totally black. And then I thought, well, it must be a moose or some kind of animal like that, I guess, or a deer around me eating. So I just went back to sleep, didn't pay any more attention.
Gosh. It's quite unnerving, isn't it, on the first time you hear it? But then it's amazing how quickly you just get used to hearing all these weird noises about you and howling and things in the middle of the night, and then you just sleep through it like it's nothing.
Yeah, that's right. Especially living in a van, which every night or every few days you park in a different place in the wilderness or in a camping area or anything. So the noises are always different.
Since we saw each other last when we was in Halifax, how many states have you driven through then on your sort of track across Canada and America?
Yeah, quite a lot, because I did, Nova Scotia, obviously, in Canada. Then I went up to Newfoundland. Then from there came back to Nova Scotia, and then New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island. Then from there we went to Quebec and Ontario. So those were all the states in Canada.
It's amazing how many different places, and to think, you
Yeah.
know, all the things that we've both been doing since we sort of got off the ship, you know, all of your
Yes.
travels, and then all of my project, what's been happening to the both of us. And it's nice that we've been able to sort of touch base when you've got a bit of internet and keep in touch.
Yeah, thank God the internet is fairly good in this country generally. So even in the middle of the desert, sometimes I've had internet as well, so it works pretty well.
So have you got sort of a favourite place that you've been to then on your travels since I left you in Halifax? Is there one place that really stands out for you?
That's very difficult. It's true, when you travel, everybody asks you which is your favorite place there, and it's so hard. But I would have to say that Nova Scotia, it was one of my favorite places there, especially up north in the what's Cape Breton. It was absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. Then, I mean, Colorado, I like it because it's really high mountains. I love mountains. It was really nice. But then another place that really struck me, it was Death Valley. Death Valley, I think, has been very intense, really great place, but it just makes you feel you've traveled to a different world. It's completely barren and completely desertic, from sand dunes to rocky mountains, very high, very low areas. Amazing, really.
Wow. I think the one thing that stands out from sort of talking to you, you know, some of the experiences that you've had, you know, from being isolated on the ship with, you know, the handful of travellers and the sailors, and you've got those pockets of isolation that you've had in your van, and then meeting up with fellow travellers again, and the types of environments that you've been to. It sounds amazing.
Yes, it's been quite a variety of experiences, really.
Yeah. And weather and wildlife.
Except also, I remember the Christmas week, I was in the desert in Nevada, in the south of Las Vegas, and it was raining most of the time. Wow. I was just thinking, but it's raining here in the middle of the desert, and it didn't stop.
Yeah, you don't imagine. You don't put those two things together, do you? Desert and raining.
That's right. Because right before Christmas, I was in Grand Canyon and Monument Valley, all that area, which is amazing, beautiful scenery. But it was very, very cold. I mean, talking about minus 14 Celsius degrees during the night, covered in snow and ice. And then I just decided, well, this is too cold for me. I want to go now, so warmer places.
I understand you had a listen to episode 1 and 2 of my podcast, and what was it like to sort of relive that week that we shared on board the ship?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. I have to say that Sandy and Karsten as well listened to them, and they really loved it too. Aww. Because it was like reliving our day by day in the ship, like if I was reading my diary, but maybe just told in a much better way than I would do it. So
you're too kind.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So it was really nice. I forgot about all the potatoes and cabbage, cabbage especially that you had, and all the potatoes that we used to have every day too.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing. People have sent me comments that have listened to it. And the one thing that people say is, you know, that they just find it quite funny to hear the commentary on the food, and that, you know, and then they get to wonder what the Pilgrim travellers would have been like. Would they have been stuck with potatoes and cabbage all the time?
Absolutely. I mean, we were we had a bit more variety, I guess, that anybody in any other ship in the Pilgrims area. Imagine that.
Yeah. Gosh. And the rations of alcohol as well, you know.
Yes. That was very good, but I mean, for me, it was like an extra because I didn't expect to have any alcohol at all. So for me, I didn't know we were gonna get some alcohol. So suddenly you get a ration of a beer and a glass of wine every day for lunch and dinner. So it was quite nice, really.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? And a little strange sort of the clipboard going round, you know, the three choices, very
Yes, yeah,
nondescript drinks, red wine, white wine, beer. Tick the box, which one you like.
yes.
And what about your photos? Because the picture that you took of me on the boat, it has
Hmm.
just been used all over the place now, from
That's
newspapers in America and
oh.
newspapers back in England. It's been featured on different websites, on the
Hmm.
Arts Council website. It's in their image bank. It's just gone everywhere, and people just love it. So, is
I'm
there
so glad.
is there a picture that you'd like for me to put on social media, that sort of you got some images of your travels that you'd like to share with people so they can see some of the most amazing places that you've been to?
I would have to go through my library of pictures to try to choose one
It can
that
be more than
could.
one.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, if there's
A
a
few.
couple that really stand out for you as, you know, some of the amazing places that you've been to, you know,
Hmm.
it'd be great to share some of those images.
Okay, all right. I will. I will look it up because I also have a friend who works for. Is a geologist in Spain, and they have a web page just trying to promote geology in an area of Spain. So every
Oh,
15 days they post a picture of my travels, usually always looking at some geology things, and then they just
okay.
explain the geology of the area. So I have some pictures of Monument Valley, Grand Canyon, and crater, and the Meteor crater in Arizona as well.
One of the things I noticed when, particularly when I got to America, not so much in Canada, but when I was in America, that people were so fascinated with our accent, one for my accent,
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
sort of regional slang, and trying to figure out where you was from. And I remember one couple, and they said, "Where are you from?" And I said, England. And they said, "Whereabouts?" I said, "The Midlands." "And where is that?" There's a clue in the name. We're in the middle. We're not quite south and we're not quite north. We're in the middle.
Yes. Generally, I found that people, when they hear a different accent than American, they just have no idea where it could be. So for me, I mean, they've asked me if I was Mexican Canadian mostly, and so well, I remember one guy who told me, "You must be Scottish." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you have the Scottish arm." And I said, "I don't think so, but if you say so." But I just think they just have no idea. They hear a different accent. And I mean, here my accent may sound a little bit more British than American, but I'm still Spanish and I have a Spanish accent. So
Yeah.
they just get completely mixed up.
Yeah. And particular ways that we pronounce things. And, you know, after I'd spent 2 weeks in Provincetown,
Hmm.
I was really aware of my own voice because I didn't
Yeah,
sound like everybody else.
because it was
And
completely different. Of course.
yeah, and
Hmm.
it's strange to try and get used to, isn't it? Because, you know, when you're talking to people, you're not aware of your own voice until
Yeah,
everybody sounds different, and then you're
absolutely.
very aware of how you're sounding. And
Yeah, yes. For me, in my case, I mean, I haven't even heard Spanish with the Spanish accents for such a long time. And then the first person I met, it was in Monument Valley right before Christmas. And I hear this group, there were like 4 or 5 people there speaking Spanish with a Spanish accent, because I heard Spanish, but always with Mexican accent.
yeah,
And then suddenly was like, wow, they sound like me. That's my
yes.
accent. So it was kind of a shock. And then I just went to them and I said, "Excuse me, you're from Spain, aren't you?" And they said, "Yeah." So we were speaking in Spanish for a while. And I thought, well, you're the first Spanish tourist I've ever met in the States. And that was in December. So, I mean, I have been here for a long time, didn't need any Spanish at all.
Gosh. Oh, and
But
it's
yeah.
just such a tug on the heartstrings, isn't it, when you hear an accent from home?
Yeah. Suddenly it's like, oh, that sounds like home.
Yeah. Well, I think I had one occasion while I was in the museum at Provincetown. I was teaching at the weaving table, and then I heard this accent, and I turned around and went, "Hey, you're not from round here, are you?" They were from Lincolnshire, so
right.
like the next county along. So and it's just strange then how you suddenly, your normal accent comes out, it floods out,
Absolutely.
and then
And
somebody
it just
asks
makes
you
you jump. It makes you turn around thinking, oh, I recognize. It is something I recognize and I haven't heard for a while. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like that dialect just floods out, and then somebody else asks you a question, and then you go back to your telephone voice.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. For me, actually, it's so nice to hear you today, because I haven't heard also British accent in a long time.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an accent I am used to a lot more than the American accent. So it's also kind of like, oh, that reminds me of what I'm used to back in Europe.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be the special guest for this episode.
My pleasure to be part of your podcast.